Strange New Worlds has returned with its second season. Episode 1 titled The Broken Circle is thus not only starting with brand new adventure aboard the USS Enterprise, but also dealing with past adventures, and the fallout of the events from Star Trek Discovery Season 1. We get the return of the Klingons, hairy and rigid, with a hint of hybridisation between the maligned Klingons of Discovery and the beloved Klingons of the Next Generation era. Aside from Klingon preferences, we get some great setup for the rest of the season, and still have a fairly self-contained adventure for our crew to solve in this manageable episode, harkening back to the times of the original series, but still having serialized character journeys, so characters like Miles O'Brien don't go from being tortured to be perfectly fine the next episode. But what did we think of this episode? Spoiler warning, this is our full review of Strange New Worlds' first episode of Season 2. As such, you have been warned. If you've not watched this episode, turn away now, unless you don't care, in which case, crack on. Hit it. Welcome to Trek Central. I'm your host Captain Jack, and for the next 10 weeks, we'll be reviewing and breaking down the second season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I hope you're excited. It's going to be a long 10 weeks, and it's very hot, and I'm wearing a shirt. Before we warp into this video, if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from a team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. Don't forget to catch our live show on Sundays at 9 PM BST on twitch.tv/TrekCentral. Join Sahil, TexTrek, and a few others as we discuss the latest episode. Link down below in the video description. As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then we want to hear about it. Get commenting. Okay, engage. It's a very bold choice of the episode, the first episode of a series, or season, to not have Pike not really feature and go off and do his own thing. The choice is setting up a courtroom episode of Una requiring a particular lawyer to take her case, of being an Illyrian which got her arrested last season. This does leave Spock in command of the Enterprise, which the show is making it seem like it is his first time as acting captain of the Enterprise. This is actually cool, as we get to see the first captaincy of Spock of the Enterprise, which is of course a very big deal for the whole history of Star Trek. I will say, this particular scene with storyboarding, it's sort of interesting, which made the scene come off quite static in a sense, while interesting was a bit meh. We mostly had cuts between Pike and Una in different locations, which felt quite jarring. How it was shot and edited together did not make the scene flow very well. It might have worked better if we had more of a scene of Pike seeing Una on a computer screen, but it's not too bad and just a minor nitpick. The episode seems to set up the situation for Spock this season, with his emotional Vulcan blocks removed since the Gorn episode from last season. Again, I really enjoy that, even though we get episodic stories with Strange New Worlds. We get a serialized element to characters, which is a nice mix and makes sense. Now, I do expect we'll be getting more of Spock dealing with his emotions this season. I will say, we also seem to get an origin story for Spock's Vulcan harp, which is not 100% necessary, but we've gotten it. I do really like it. Now, looking at the original series, we can see Spock playing his harp and think back on the fact it was M'Benga who gave it to him to help him control his emotions and stress. Not sure if playing a harp would ease my stress, but you know, we'll try it one day for a video. Spock dealing with his human side in this episode does come into play from the story side as well, with Lance sending a distress call to the Enterprise and Spock being in charge. He has to violate orders, to do the right thing and not the most logical thing. This is where he hatches a plan to steal the Enterprise.
We must steal the Enterprise.
To steal the Enterprise?
Sounding rather cliche at this point, isn't it? Who doesn't steal a starship in Star Trek? I mean, come on now. Better security, honestly. Spock's gang tried to simulate a core breach to get the inspectors off the ship so they can steal the Enterprise and go to the KJAR system, a dilithium mining planet on the edge of Klingon space. This is where we get our first look at Commander Pelia, the future chief engineer of the Enterprise, played by Carol Kane. She's in charge of the inspection, and basically looking over the Enterprise at Starbase 1, and she instantly knows warp core breach is a lie. I do really like her character so far, but I think the accent which Carol Kane puts on as Pelia is a little jarring, and I hope subsequent episodes this may get easier to listen to and more understandable, I guess. Pelia has taught about warp core breaches at the Starfleet Academy, and I love her use of logic in figuring out this scheme. She even postulates that since it is a Vulcan in charge trying to do this, they must have a good reason to do so, and she eventually actually helps make the issue look a bit more credible to give the Enterprise a reason to leave space dock. Not quite sure what wins over Admiral April. Another little character aspect is that she seems to have a history of Amanda Grayson, Spock's mother. She also seems to not be human, as Uhura says that she's a Lafanite, a Lanzarite, a Lafanite, yeah. It seems she's long-lived, saying she last out on a ship over 100 years ago. This is a very original series, just having some alien species that look 100% human and turning up in the last 5 minutes. So I guess at least we're borrowing that from TOS. We do learn by the end of the episode that the Landswites are an alien species that live on Earth and were only first discovered in the 22nd century, so probably sometime after Star Trek Enterprise. She says that she came out to Amanda Grayson, but she's a Laphronite, and considering Amanda is the ambassador with, somewhere, it does make sense, but it does have the issues of perhaps making the Trek universe feel a little bit smaller than it needed to be. Okay, we've got to talk about the Klingons. We've seen them in the trailers, but we're getting Klingons, and some Klingons that look a bit more like the ones we're oh so familiar with. So far it does look like a mixture between the Discovery era Klingons and the motion picture, mostly with similar prosthetics to the Discovery ones, but also centralised on the forehead without the lower half of it. Sort of makes sense. On the planet, we also see some classic Klingon blood wine cups, and Lana's an outfit that was last worn by Georgiou in Season 2 of Discovery. This makes sense as this is what Georgiou was undercover on Kronos, so her outfit must be Klingon in origin to blend in. The money which Lana wins from a drinking game against Klingons on this planet was also seen in Discovery Season 1, during the gambling of Sumter Sang. Now, talking about the situation on the planet, things do get a little bit weird because this is Star Trek. With the crew now somewhat back together, meeting Milan on this sort of lore planet, we get this situation critical to the Federation, which is the dilithium mining planet making a fortune providing both sides during the Klingon Federation War. Now for this peace, they cannot exploit either side, so a syndicate called the Broken Circle, which is a rather cliche name, of both ex-Klingons and ex-Starfleet officers are trying to restart the war, for profit. Profit. We also learn from Dr. Mbenga that the casualty number of the Klingon Federation War was 100 million Federation bodies. Yikes. Mbenga and Chapel instantly want to aid the civilians injured from ion exposure due to the scheme to restart the war. It's kind of a nice touch. They do get kidnapped pretty quickly to heal the Broken Circle members who have been subject to ion exposure via photon torpedoes. So it's that cliche thing of the helpers getting arrested again, and now we need to save them. Unfortunately, it does look like that Andre de Kim is not returning as Transporter Chief Carl in this season. Instead, we have Noah Lamana who's playing as Chief J. There's some big shoes to fill as people did like Chief Kyle. I remember the nickname on Twitter, Star Trek Twitter, behave. So we'll see what Season 2 has in store for them. We actually exclusively broke the story that Noah would be joining Strange New Worlds in Season 2 via TrekCentral.net. Go check out the article if you want to learn more about them and how they fit into Strange New Worlds Season 2, along with some other people who have not arrived just yet. One of the biggest aspects of this episode, which I really adore, is that the miners' plans to restart the war with the Klingon Empire is to use a Crossfield class starship. It's also fascinating how the utilisation of a Crossfield class helps to recontextualise a lot of Star Trek Discovery for the better. We'll do an entire dedicated video on this topic because it is fascinating, but showing the design of a Crossfield existed before the Discovery series and the US Discovery itself was sort of interesting, but it shows it was altered for the Spore drive, and it helps make the visual continuity work even better. Now, especially when the saucer of the Crossfield class looks almost identical to the very first footage we got of Star Trek Discovery way back. The second shell, however, is interesting, with a deflector dish above the saucer and the pylons connecting to this, with the Enterprise star on the cells. It looked like they just flipped the whole thing and called it a day. Kit bashing is finest in Star Trek. The interior of the ship seems to be a mismatch of Starfleet tech, which makes sense for the story and sort of saying the ship is constructed with what components the group could buy on the black market. The sickbay looks to have Strange New Worlds interior, as well as some of the corridors, but the turbolift and some other corridors are from Discovery era components, which would make sense. The registry of the ship is NCC 1279. Now, while it's a very cool looking ship, it does get destroyed by the Enterprise before it can attack the Klingon ship and restart the war. We do get a look at some of the other Strange New Worlds era ships in this episode Dr. Starbase 1, with an Archer type ship and a Farragut type ship as well. Probably not the USS Farragut itself, but the model was made, so we might as well use it again. Personally, I would really like to see if they use some Discovery era ships to populate the space shots. They used a Shepard class in Season 1, but some more around Starbase 1 would make sense, whether it be a Hoover class, a Cardenas class, something else for ship nerds to enjoy. This was the strength of Picard Season 3, a fleshing of the fleet, and I hope other Trek shows start to take those lessons on board. Dr. Mbenga served on the moon of Jagal and tended to the wounded Klingons there. There was a battle there called the Battle of Chakana, where it seems a lot of people died. This season of interviews and this episode seems to be doing more of the consequences of a Klingon Federation war, and what it's like for active serving officers to go through such an event, and it definitely seems like characters like Mbenga are having some flashbacks to the war, even commenting when war can truly be over. It's probably remarking on the lasting effects it has on people and could be compared to the effects of PTSD. M'Benga and Chapel take some sort of drug which allows him to go down and kill numerous Klingons through his ship. Well, not kill them, but subdue them. We know that Chapel does specialise in short-term temporary genetic enhancements from the very first episode of Strange New Worlds, and it does look like they've had this drug before, perhaps even during the Klingon War. I will say, some of M'Benga and Chapel's fighting moves are straight from the original series. M'Benga even does the double head slap that Kirk does to the Gorn in TOS. We actually have a Kirk book on how to fight like him, and we've reviewed it on trademarks.net. Go read it if you want some fighting moves. I'm not doing them in a video. Sorry. I know. Spock can only use his logic to defuse the situation with the Klingon captain of the D7, which was nearly attacked by this false flag operation, but also uses the fact that he is of typical Vulcan, or isn't a typical Vulcan, to sway the Klingon over emotionally, something they should meet face to face over a barrel of blood wine. It's quite a lot of wine. It is nice that Spock tries the logical approach, but for this, he finds that the human approach works better. This really helps cement what Spock will be going through this season, it seems, and is a good way to start this arc for our favourite Vulcan character and expand it as it goes on. I will say, it would have been nice to see a little bit more variety in the Klingons in this episode. We could have gotten some Discovery-style Klingons in the background to help flesh out the species a little bit more, similar to how Star Trek Picard did with the Romulans and whether they had ridges or not. It would also have been nice to see some TOS-style Klingons, though for all we know, there could have been a considerable thing with smooth foreheads. I'm sure it'll come up at some point. Okay, we've got to talk about the Gorn threat, especially with the brass hiding something. This season seems to be heading up with a Gorn episode, with the final scene of this episode being the brass with Admiral April worrying about a war that's approaching them, with an unidentifiable ship seemingly heading into Federation territory, and the ship possibly being a Gorn attack ship. They have to walk an interesting line to have their cake and eat it too. The fact this ship is not 100% identified as a Gorn ship is nice, but how are they going to keep it like that for the Gorn's official first contact in the original series? We'll have to wait and see. This will probably be a recurring story element through this season, with perhaps the final episode confronting the Gorn, and they can either have these Gorn be a splinter faction or something else entirely. But they can still make it work if they want to. We'll have to wait and see. It's a little bit hit or miss right now. This was the first episode of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, titled The Broken Circle. The episode was written by Henry Alonso Myers and Akiva Goldsman, both showrunners of Strange New Worlds, while the first episode was directed by Chris Fisher, who is fantastic at this, by the way. This episode is directed by Nichelle Nichols, in a nice memoriam at the end of the episode, saying, "For Nichelle, who was the first through the door and showed us the stars, hailing frequencies forever open," which is a very nice comment. Celia Rose Gooding had some really good scenes in this episode, and is continuing a legacy which Nichelle made as a horror in the original series. Overall, this was an enjoyable episode and a solid first outing for Strange New World Season 2, but there are some issues I had with the episode. Some of the directing was superb, but some was very out of place and felt sort of disconnected. These are more difficult scenes, such as how to communicate a conversation between characters that aren't in the same room. This is shown well at the end of the episode with Spock talking to April, but not shown well at the start of Pike talking to Una. Set decoration was excellent in this episode as well, as the use of what I believe to be volume in some of the exterior shots on the planet, which enabled a seamless planetary look from this mining colony and still felt real. The best use of set decoration and design was the interior of a Crossfield class ship, melding designs between the Constitution style interior of Strange New Worlds and the Crossfield style interiors of Star Trek Discovery. This helped to further sell the story of what was happening, which should be the case, and it makes sense. Well, again, we'll do a full dedicated video on this later in the year. Season 1, Episode 1 of Strange New Worlds dealt with the fallout of the canonical events of Discovery Season 2's final, in a way of enhancing what happened there in Discovery, while Season 2, Episode 1 of Strange New Worlds is dealing with the fallout of the canonical events of Discovery Season 1's final. Whatever your thoughts on Discovery, Strange New Worlds is doing what all franchise shows do well, not only standing on their own, but enhancing and using the world around them. It's really cool and I love it. We also now have Lan back on the ship, a new chief engineer, but I believe I'm starting to like her chaotic energy, which helps to differentiate her from the favourite of Hemmer last season. May he rip in peace. And the next episode will of course pick up with the courtroom episode of Strange New Worlds with Una standing trial, and hopefully find out where Pike went off venturing around the galaxy. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 has a new episode releasing every Thursday on Paramount+, and the best thing is, it releases the same day around the world! Thank Christ, that only took 5 years, didn't it? Gee, Paramount! It released on Paramount Plus in the UK, yeah, I know, crazy, right? Can you tell the excitement here? The United States, a few countries in Europe, and a full list is available at trademarks.net. Of course, it still streams on Crave TV and TVNZ in New Zealand, I believe. Again, a full list by trademarks.net. So, what do you think of that first episode of the second outing of Strange New Worlds? Let us know in the comments below, because if you're talking Trek, then we would love to hear about it. The first 6 episodes of this season have been sent out to screeners, which we do not get. However, the general fan consensus is what really matters, so make sure to subscribe to Trek Central, as I'm not only reviewing each and every episode on the day, but also be doing some preview analytics of the episode as trailers drop, theory videos, and other explanation videos as we get more of Strange New Worlds Season 2. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server, the links are down below. Make sure you don't miss any news from Strange New Worlds or the Star Trek universe. We also have a brand new Twitch channel where we won't only be live streaming thoughts on Strange New Worlds, but also playing some Star Trek games. Yes, Star Trek Online, Star Trek Resurgence, Elite Force. Make sure to follow us there, the link's in the video description and on screen now. For now, I've been Captain Jack. Thank you for watching and joining me again for a Star Trek review season. I can't wait to share the next 10 weeks with you. It is going to be awesome. Live long and prosper, my friends, and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.